to the Fantasy Footballers DFS Podcast with your hosts, Kyle Borganoni and Matthew Betz.
Well, hello there. It's Friday, January 6th, and we're back once again. It's week 18, the Fantasy Footballers DFS Podcast. I'm your host, Kyle Borganoni, as always with my bestest buddy, Matthew Betz. Betz, give him a hey-ho.
Hey-o. That was kind of like a Brooks hey-o right there, huh? What's up, man? I'm excited for this show. I'm excited for week 18. I'm not going to lie. I thought, as the season went on, by the time we got to week 17, week 18, I thought I'd be out of gas. I'm fired up for this slate. How are you feeling about week 18, man? This is the extra regular season week that we didn't have last year.
You know, things change pretty rapidly, not just with COVID news, but with how much players are actually going to play. And I think that's where us, as DFS for the rest of us, that's where we can actually take a stance and we can, play this to our advantage this week, because it really is about finding opportunity. It's about finding which players are going to play the full allotment of snaps. And there's some gross games. Don't get me wrong. We're going to be previewing these games. And on Tuesday's show, we mentioned every game except for one is 44 points below. So that's pretty rough. But overall, what would you say? Why can we feel good about this slate?
Yeah, week 18, basically kind of like last year for week 17, is, like you said, that sort of situation where you have to figure out which teams have motivation to actually play the entire game with their starters, which teams might only play a drive, a quarter, a half, those sort of situations. And obviously that's going to open up our player pool to a lot of names that we might not really know that well, but that kind of opens up an edge, because we're talking about maybe second, third string guys that are going to get significant playing time this week. So being able to kind of find the pieces to the puzzle that match in terms of, players that project really well at good price tags is difficult to do if you're not plugged in. If you are, and if you're listening to the show, I think you're going to be primed for success this week.
It's the week of the Ray McLeods. It's the Laquan Treadwell. I mean, we're talking about guys that you did not even think were on a roster starting this year, but it's going to be super valuable when you're assembling a cash game lineup, when you're doing tournaments to figure out how do I get different, because there's going to be some plays that the field just says, oh, I'm going to play Cooper Kupp and Jonathan Taylor. And I get it. We'll talk about those guys. But where's the value on the slate? We'll get to talk about it. So I'm excited for week 18. I'm excited for the rest of the playoffs, man. Playoff DFS is different. We actually have a question in the mailbag about how we approach playoffs a little bit differently. So we'll get to that. And if you want all of our picks, you can get them in the DFS Pass. Go to dfspass.com. Use the promo code DFSPod. It pays for itself within 1 week. We're not lying. We have tons and tons of listener testimonials that are so yes, join with us, and we'd love to play with you in the playoffs. But without further ado, let's get into our picks.
Straight cash, homie.
Talking about our cash picks, DraftKings, we'll give some FanDuel specific ones. At quarterback, we've talked about these names. I know you're really hyped. You were hyped in best ball season to talk about Trey Lance, but how are you feeling at the end of the season that you get to go all in on Trey Lance once again?
I love it, man. I mean, this is where we're getting even. We lost all the money in best ball. We're getting it back in DFS playing Trey Lance. Man, I just overdrafted him like crazy. But yeah, last week it was pretty straightforward. You had to have Trey Lance in cash. He was $4,800. They basically gave him away for free after the Jimmy G injury. I still don't think we're going to see Jimmy G this week with that thumb issue, still dealing with the fracture and the ligament injury in his thumb. So it should be Trey Lance again. He's priced up a little bit. He's 5.5, so it's not like he's free like he was last week. He's still insanely cheap for a guy that we know can run the football. And what was really nice to see last week in that game was in the first half, he didn't really throw very much. And then we saw them open up the playbook, kind of trust Trey Lance, let him sling it a little bit, over 260 yards and 2 passing touchdowns. So if he can somehow put all that together in one game, I know the matchup on paper is tough with the Rams secondary, but still, when a quarterback is going to run the football, he is in play, especially at this 5.5 tag.
Who do you feel has a safer floor? Because the other quarterback that I'm going to mention is Taysom Hill at 6.2 against Atlanta. He played against Atlanta twice last year. He's a quarterback 4, quarterback 8. I feel like Taysom feels safer in my mind, but Lance has the opportunity to actually explode, and he's cheaper. So right now, if you had to tell the people to put their hard-earned money on one of these two rushing quarterbacks, are you saying Lance?
I think I am. One situation that really is important to me about Taysom Hill this week is the offensive line for New Orleans. The last couple of weeks, it has been injuries and COVID situations and all that sort of thing. A couple of weeks ago, it was both tackles out, and in that situation, it's just hard for the offense to succeed and move the football. So we know that the playmakers aren't there in the passing game for New Orleans, but if Taysom Hill can run the football as we've seen, he'll be fine. It's just a matter of if those tackles are out again, I'd probably lean with Lance if they're in against Atlanta, who maybe they don't need the tackles. I mean, Atlanta can't rush the passer. They're bottom 5 in sack rate and pressure rate. So Taysom can get it done, of course, even in that situation. So I think I lean Lance right now, but of course things could change until Sunday.
I lean Taysom because Saints are 4.5-point road favorites. Falcons can't rush the passer, as you mentioned, and then they are terrible, giving up the 7th most rushing yards in the league, and they're terrible at defending pass-catching running backs. So I feel like there's just a safe floor with Taysom. If you just wanted to go straight safety, Lance is more volatile, I mean, against a way better Rams defense, but those are our 2 cash picks. And then we have to mention Josh Allen on both sides, 8.1 on DraftKings. On FanDuel, I think I would play him because the FanDuel values aren't as different, but he's my cash game quarterback in FanDuel. They are just huge favorites against the Jets, 17 points at home in a must-win situation to get the AFC East title. So Josh Allen can explode, and I put this in the DFS Pass. Remember last year, the Bills were supposed to rest their starters. Instead, they came out in Week 17 and obliterated the Dolphins, put up 56 points. So I love the Bills because they just don't care. Like, they're just ready to put up points no matter what, and so I think they're a safe bet as well. Let's go to running backs, and there's a ton of names here. I mean, we can name 7-8 guys, so let's start with Jonathan Taylor.
Yeah, not much to say. I mean, we kind of know the story at this point. He is going to be the focal point of the offense, as he always is in the last, 12 weeks of the year. He's just been unreal. It's like every week 100 yards. So you're going to likely get that bonus. He also has motivation this week to try to push for 2,000 yards. I've heard little rumblings like they want to try to help him get there. It's unrealistic. It's 266 yards to get to 2,000. I mean, if someone's going to do it, it's going to be him. But looking at this spot, taking on the Jaguars, they are like 15.5-point favorites last time I looked. In a positive game script, if you're picking one running back that's going to get the ball 25 times against a terrible defense, you're hoping it's Jonathan Taylor, and this is a dream spot for him. I mean, Damian Harris and Ramondre Stevenson last week combined for 4 rushing touchdowns against these Jaguars. So they're done on the year. They're looking to get out of here and just move on from 2021. The Colts have everything to play for. They need this win to make the playoffs. It's going to go through Jonathan Taylor.
Yeah, I have Taylor in my cash game lineup right now. Is this another week where we do 3 running backs in terms of our builds because we're getting a ton of value?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, we'll talk about these names here at the 5K range and the 6K range, but I think they're projecting better than some of the wide receivers in that range. So I do think this looks like a 3 running back slate, at least for cash.
I'll mention 2 names that I like. Rashad Penny, Donta Foreman. Rashad Penny's 6.5. Foreman is 5.7. He's 6.9 on FanDuel. Both great plays. Foreman's been getting a ton of work. He just gets the ball. He's a great bet for a touchdown. And the Titans want to win so they can lock up that first seed. But Penny was awesome last week. Like, I think it's easy to look at him and say, oh, that was cute. He's had this little run. He's the RB1 over the last month. And he looks like a player nobody wants to tackle. The Cardinals aren't good at defending the run. So Rashad Penny.
I'm laughing right now. Who says watch football? That was cute. Does anyone actually say that watching Rashad Penny run the ball?
They're like, oh, that's nice. You helped me to fantasy championship. But let's keep playing this guy because he's a good bet to get a touchdown. So I like those 2. If you're just betting on who's going to get a touchdown, I like those 2 guys, Penny and Foreman. Who are some other names?
Yeah, they're both awesome. Just real quick, though, I know they were talking about Derrick Henry maybe coming back. I would be shocked if he had more than a handful of carries. Do you agree that it's going to be Foreman no matter what? Even if Henry's active, he'll probably just get a few touches?
They can just take care of business, right, against the Texans. I think they're going to rest him, give him another week to rest up with the bye. So Foreman, to me, I'm not worried about the workload.
Okay, yep, I'm with you. I just wanted to make sure. Yeah, a couple other names that I really like. I mean, Devin Singletary, talking about the Jets as we do every week. Like, hey, you're going to play running back against the Jets. But Devin Singletary, is a guy that I was really concerned about. Just like, we've seen this flash in the pan from him in the past. And do they always go back to him? No. But in the last 3 weeks, they absolutely are going back to him. I mean, he's getting like bell cow treatment. Some of the best usage in football, coming off a season high 24 opportunities last week against the Jets at 6K on DraftKings, where he can catch the football. That looks really strong as well this week.
Dave Montgomery, this will be the third week in a row that I talk about him, and he's been the RB2 over the last month, so he's been really great against Minnesota. The workload's there. 7.6 on FanDuel is a really great tag. And then let's just talk about Chase Edmonds really quick. If you knew that James Conner was going to be out, is Chase Edmonds again locked in your lineup?
I think so. I think just looking at the slate as far as pricing, like where he's at, down at 5.8 on DraftKings, if he was the only guy, it would be an incredible spot. I mean, the last 2 weeks without Conner in the lineup, he's playing an average of 86% of the snaps, 25 and 24 opportunities in those 2 weeks. And if you're going to get that type of volume at a sub 6K price tag against the Seattle Seahawks, who are particularly vulnerable to pass catching backs, which that's what Chase Edmonds does, he'd be in my lineup for sure at that tag.
And on FanDuel 6.6, I mean, great tag as well. So Chase Edmonds, when we mentioned probably about 7 or 8 guys right there. So I think this week is one of those weeks where you pick 3, probably Jonathan Taylor, and just kind of roll with it and hope for the touchdown upside for some of these teams, especially the ones like you mentioned with Singletary, like huge favorites. He's a good bet to get in the end zone. Let's go to wide receiver. I'm right now having a stance where I'm taking Jonathan Taylor and not putting Cooper Kupp in my lineup. Am I an idiot? Please tell me I am not the stupidest man on this podcast.
Dude, I mean, I just hope, this is going to sound bad, I hope we get some value that opens up, and unfortunately the only way that happens is like injury or COVID, so I'm not wishing that, but if somehow we can get both these guys on our lineup to just jam them in, like that is a dream scenario because both these guys are just in an incredible spot. I know we talked on Tuesday. I know that you said you lean JTT. I said I lean Kupp. I was thinking about it more. I think now I lean more Jonathan Taylor, just given the spot in that situation. And sometimes you're right. But what is there to say about Cooper Kupp, right? It needs 12 catches to pass Michael Thomas for the all-time record for receptions, 136 yards to break Calvin Johnson's single-season record. I mean, they're taking on the Niners. They've got injuries in the secondary. Like, how does he not go like 10 for 100? Like, that feels like his floor, doesn't it?
For sure. And I want him to break the record selfishly because he is a friend of the show. He's a fan of the Spitballers podcast. Cooper Kupp's very likable, and what he's done this year has been unstoppable. So I feel like that's the conversation, is JTT or Kupp. And if we get some value, you can go there. Ray McCloud is probably not a name you thought I'd be talking about, but with the news of Deontay Johnson on the COVID list, he's a cheap PPR option, and we're just looking for 7-8 points for him to 2x on his salary. So is that where you're at right now, or are you leaning towards Chase Claypool?
I mean, the wide receiver value this week below 4,500 is non-existent. So it's pretty much Ray McCloud and not that many other options. So I have him in right now. Look, like, you're hoping for 12 points, honestly. That's what you're hoping for with Ray McCloud. I don't think he's the type of guy that you can break the slate with. If he's going to be really popular, he's a definite don't play for me in tournaments. But the matchup is awesome on paper. We know the Ravens secondary has been banged up all year. They're vulnerable. But, dude, watching Monday Night Football, Big Ben with his ADOT of like 2.6 yards, McCloud seeing a 5.5 ADOT on the year, he's basically an extension of the running game. So if he gets you, let's say, 5 catches for like 50 yards, I mean, you should be thrilled with Ray McCloud. So I think he's in there as a safe floor option. The ceiling, obviously, is quite low.
And I'll at least say this about him. He's had games of 12 targets, 8 targets, and last week 10. So there's at least some precedent for him to be a PPR option. A Braxton Berrios, if you will, the great Braxton Berrios. So that's where I'm at in terms of Pittsburgh wide receivers. Speaking of Pitty City, our boy, is been devoid of touchdowns since week 9. It's just sad. So if you're playing Jonathan Taylor, I'm assuming you're not playing Pitty City in your cash?
I think you can, man. I mean, how bad is this Jaguars defense? Like, literally bottom 3 in almost every category. And I don't know if you saw when the slate opened early in the week, it was not the Colts who had the highest team applied total. It has since been bet up. They now hold the highest total on the slate at 29.5 points. So Jonathan Taylor can fall in the end zone twice. Michael Pittman can catch a touchdown as well. I think it's totally fine to play them both in cash.
Some other names in that mid-range. Brandon Cooks, 6.3, feels just safe. Titans have given up the second most wide receiver fantasy points. And I need to bring this name up because every week he shows up as a value in terms of points per dollar. And every week I mention him, and every week I'm so scared to click the button. It's DJ Moore at 5.8. Where are you at on our boy DJ? Because we both love him. We think he's super talented. Is he going to even 2x his salary?
I hope. I mean, like looking at the underlying metrics on DJ Moore, it screams positive regression. You know, looking at this guy, like he's seeing an average of 10 targets per game over his last 5. I'm not sure if you saw, Kyle, on Wednesday and Thursday, Robbie Anderson was a DNP with a quad issue. And it's not like Robbie's seeing a ton of volume, but at least further solidifies DJ Moore as the focal point of the offense. And against the Bucs, you know, you can't run the football. Like you have to throw. So I think the volume will be there. The efficiency may not be, but when you look at how much volume he's seen, his talent, the fact that you have to throw on Tampa, I think he's a GPP only play for me this week. But, you know, and really that's just because of Sam Darnold. Like we can't trust him to deliver the football accurately. So, you know, with that instead, you know, with that in mind, he's a guy that I want to take shots on in tournaments because the upside is always there for DJ Moore.
For sure. You could get one of those games where he goes 5 for 90 and a touchdown, and at his salary, that's excellent. So DJ Moore, 5.8. We need to mention Christian Kirk. I wrote him up earlier this week. I'm going to be writing him up again as a great GPP play, but in cash on FanDuel, he's only 6.2. Last week, it was the Antoine Wesley show, which we all predicted, of course. But wide receiver 21 on FanDuel, what's your temperature on Christian Kirk?
Yeah, I think he's solid. I mean, this is a game that the Cardinals are motivated to win. It's the highest over-under on the slate, so it's the best game environment. Without DeAndre Hopkins, he's seeing about a 23% target share over the last month of the season. So he's been totally fine. I think my thing with Christian Kirk is that it almost feels like he's locked in for like 6 for 80. You know, like I don't see him being a guy that's going to go out there and give you like the 9 for 130 and 2 that you're looking for GPPs, but in cash, his target share is there, and this offense is certainly motivated. So yeah, I like him a lot.
We'll talk about that game in a second and how to stack it, because that's the game with the highest total, Seattle and Arizona. So there's lots of interesting ways. Let's go to tight end. We're going to kind of shrink our options this week. Gronk is in a great spot. He's also motivated with some contract stuff that if he goes over a certain amount of catches and yards, I think he has to get 3 TDs actually to hit his contract incentive. But catches-wise, I think he's safe. 6.3. Zach Ertz on both sites. On FanDuel, he's locked in my lineup, 5.6. Way too safe. His target share, he leads the team since DeAndre Hopkins is out. And then last one I'll mention, the Muth. If Deontay's out, where are you at with Muth? 4.6 and 5.1 on FanDuel.
Dude, he is getting so loose this week. It's an awesome spot. You know, the Ravens been vulnerable against tight ends. I think I like him a lot. I mean, we can't say enough how much volume Deontay Johnson vacates in this offense, almost 30% target share. So yeah, it's going to be spread out, I think, but he's a guy that's already been getting a handful of targets most weeks. And I think if you're going to give him somewhere in the range of like 6 to 8-ish targets in this spot, I think is totally viable this week for DFS.
Austin Hooper is way down there at 3.6. He's in a great matchup. Case Keenum's throwing the ball, so I don't really know, but I needed to mention him as someone $1,000 cheaper if you wanted to. And Betz, why don't you finish us off with DST? There's a couple of slam dunks.
Yeah, I think the most popular DST on the slate is going to be the football team. They are 3.1 taking on Jake Fromm with basically no weapons, given that Kenny Golladay has done about as much as you, Kyle, this year. It's been rough for New York. There's not much to say. Jake Fromm is not good at football, so give me the football team here, 3.1. And then for Cincinnati, like really the spot here, we have to just talk about, it looks like they're going to sit a lot of their guys. We already know Joe Burrow's out. Joe Mixon's on the COVID list. I think they even hinted like Jamar Chase might not play. T. Higgins might not play. So you might just get second stringers out there against Cleveland. So Cleveland at 2.6, I think is a viable punt this week.
Yep, you can definitely go there against Brandon Allen. The Bills, if you want to pay up, 3.7 on DraftKings, 4.5 on FanDuel. And then I need to mention Tampa, also on FanDuel at 4.2 against Carolina, Sam Darnold, and whatever else they're running out there. It's another solid option. They're heavy favorites. Let's talk about the games we want to stack.
Stack Attack.
This week, we're going to mention 2 games that Betz and I say, hey, these are the games we want to stack. They're both in the NFC West, which is cool. It's cool that we get these matchups. I know a lot of people for redraft are already checked out because they had the championship. But for real NFL, there's lots of stuff to play for, and they're all divisional matchups. So the first one we will highlight is Seattle at Arizona. Arizona is now 7-point favorites. This game is a 48-point total, and they have a 27.5-point team implied total. It's the third highest on the main slate. So the Cardinals are an offense that have struggled, in my mind, really in the second half of the season to feel like they can gain a ton of momentum and actually get there in games. Like before in the first half of the season, Kyler was an MVP candidate, and we could actually count on Kyler plus one or two options each week. If it was AJ Green, if it was Christian Kirk, like it was spread around. Now, I feel like I have to ask myself, who's going to get there? It's been Chase Edmonds recently. It was Antoine Wesley. So with the Cardinals side, where are you confident stacking with Kyler?
So it's really tough because, like you said, when in the old days, like it was, you wanted him to run the football, and that was just so much of what he was doing. It was so much of his value. So we would say, okay, just single stack him. But the rushing hasn't been there the way it was in 2020. So I almost think I would kind of like to double stack him this week. I mean, you could definitely play Ertz and another pass catcher. I like Ertz a lot, as we said, but I do think he's going to be really popular in tournaments. So just be mindful of that if you are going that route, be sure to get different. I think of the pass catchers, the most obvious name to mention is Christian Kirk, given the target share. Like, can you trust Antoine Wesley, though, for what he did last week? I mean, he's playing a ton of time, running a ton of routes, but we also saw DeAndre Hopkins, one of the best wide receivers in football, be very inconsistent. So am I going to go back to Antoine Wesley after a 2-touchdown performance? I don't think so. What about you?
Yeah, he's big, 6'4", 206, so he's a big target. So I understand if he's getting some red zone looks. I mean, Chase Edmonds is my favorite, like you mentioned. Him and Kyler have correlated super well over the last couple of years. So it's not like out of nowhere that Chase Edmonds, he's just getting the opportunities with Connor out. So I like Edmonds, and then I mentioned earlier, I like Kirk. I feel like Ertz is going to be the cash game play. So in tournaments, I don't mind going elsewhere, knowing that, let's say Ertz goes 6 for 80. It's like, wow, that's awesome in cash. I was really excited. But in a tournament, it's not really going to get me there unless he catches a touchdown. So Ertz, I'll probably be a little underweight in GPPs, and then I'll be a little bit more heavy on Kirk. AJ Green is in no man's land for me, where I just, can I get a GPP winning performance from AJ Green?
Can he win you the millie? I don't think so. Where you need the perfect lineup. Can he win you the stuff I play in where you need, an 80th percentile outcome? Sure, I think so. I mean, look, AJ Green, we kind of know what he is at this point, but the spot's awesome. Like this game environment, we have to remember the context of the slate is so important. This spot is awesome for the Cardinals offense. They got the third highest team implied total. It's the highest over under. If you expect Kyler to have success here, I think it makes sense to take some shots on AJ Green. He also has some incentives in his contract. I think he needs 75 yards or so to earn a bonus in his contract for this year. So there's some motivation for him. I don't mind him. I'll probably take some shots if he is going to be overlooked in GPPs for stacks. On
the Seattle side, I love Tyler Lockett this week. And I know I could say that to you every single week and you'd be super excited. You're one of the true Tyler Lockett truthers out there. But his last 3 games against Arizona, you ready for this?
Hit me.
15 for 203. How would you like that?
I would absolutely.
That could be a 3-game total. That was one game he did against them. The one after that, 9 for 67 and 1, and most recently 4 for 115. So he's just torched Arizona. He's cheaper than DK Metcalf on both sites. We just saw a 3-touchdown game from Metcalf. So I'm calling a Lockett week.
I like it. Yeah, dude, sign me up. I think I'll probably get overlooked too a little bit by the field this week. So I'm in on Lockett. If you're in on Lockett, does that mean that you're not playing Metcalf, or are you just going to play multiple lineups kind of around the game and then pick a couple with DK and go from there? Yeah,
I'll just probably be underweight just because of what Metcalf did last week. And if the field responds the way that we are going to see in the roster percentage report, then give me some more Lockett, especially because Arizona loves to give it up deep. And we know that's what Russ does. He throws deep more than at a higher percentage than anyone else in the league. It's 15.6%. So Russ is great on DraftKings. That price tag, I love it. 6.3. He's Jason's start of the week. We saw vintage Russ last week, right? It was super efficient. It was 4 touchdowns. And last year in Arizona, he lit them up. He went 388 and 3 and ran for 84 on the ground. So last year, I don't know if you remember, that game was like a barn burner and Arizona won at the end, 37-34. It was like the first time Arizona had beaten Seattle in years. So this is the environment we want. Both of these teams, at least since Russ the last couple of weeks, been playing more up-tempo. They have a ground game that you actually have to respect with Rashad Penny. And then we know that Arizona is more of a pace-up team. I think without James Conner, they have to play that way. They can't just run Chase Edmonds into the line 20 times. So I like the way that this game sets up, and I like that you can either double stack Kyler, you can double stack with Russ on the other side and pick your spots.
Yeah, one thing though, real quick, we just want to chat through this. I don't know, do we have the breaking news drop?
Let me see if I can get that, because that would be pretty awesome. I do.
Breaking news.
The video that plays with that is just incredible. Chase Edmonds did not practice today on Thursday again. So Wednesday DNP. Thursday. Kyle is he's loving his new life out there in Arizona with all these new drops. Did not practice Wednesday, did not practice Thursday. Rib and toe issue. So we might not have Chase Edmonds.
The old rib and toe.
Classic. You always see it together, the rib and the toe.
Those
man.
two go
Every day I see it at
together
work.
like lamb and tuna fish. Eno Benjamin alert. Hello, people. I've been hyping this guy up for years. Is it Eno Benjamin time if you're getting him? I can look up his price now, but I'm assuming he's a stone mim.
I would think so. I haven't even begun to look at him. But yeah, and also along the same lines, just real quick, James Conner was limited in the last couple of days. So if you are getting James Conner rather without Chase Edmonds, I assume we just have the same conversation. He's in an awesome spot.
Yes, totally. Eno Benjamin, 4K, Stone Min on DraftKings. Get hyped, people. But it's a great point to bring up. Like, there's things that still can change about this game, but overall, I think it's this game that we want to stack. Anything else you want to say about the Seattle side?
No, I think we touched on it. This is better late than never, right? Like, we were kind of all on them early in the year. They let us down. They've been red hot lately. So yes, I am interested in Russ stacks this week.
All right, give me your Vegas pick.
Dude, I'm gonna go with the Cardinals here. Laying a touchdown. I'll go with Cardinals.
I'm gonna take Seattle +7. I feel like if Arizona's in a spot where they're this favored by a touchdown at home, like I don't think they're a touchdown better than the Seattle, especially if Russ has his chef's hat on and he's cooking. Next game, another NFC West game. San Francisco 49ers at the Los Angeles Chargers. This game has a 44.5 total. I already bet the over, and the line moved bets by half a point. Rams are 4.5 point favorites. Why are we talking about this game if it's that low?
Good question. No, I'm just kidding. It is. Context of the slate. Again, we have to talk about this as a completely different situation. Most weeks, we're kind of wiping out those, 43, 44 point totals. This week, every game is there. So we're looking at teams that have max motivation to win this week, and that can really kind of go back and forth. And these two teams are both going to be playing their starters the entire time. So for the 49ers, they have to win or they're out, basically. Win and you're in sort of situation. So they're going to be motivated, obviously. And then for the Rams, they can still clinch the division and improve seeding, basically, with a win. So both teams will be playing, and they've got high upside guys. You talk about how you speed up a game is big plays, and you've got Cooper Kupp, you've got Deebo Samuel, you've got George Kittle. So there's a lot of ways you can go in this spot. And so I think it's a really interesting angle for tournaments.
Yes, and the way that these two teams play is obviously very different. Like we know it's San Francisco, they have the second highest neutral rush rate. On the other side of the ball, you look at Matthew Stafford and the way that they have continually said, hey, we actually feel confident throwing the ball. They have the fourth highest neutral pass rate. But dude, what's up with your boy Stafford recently? It hasn't looked good.
I'm sort of kind of convinced that maybe Jared Goff, he's been injured, right? He's been out for the Lions, snuck back over to LA, put on a Matthew Stafford jersey, and started playing football. I mean, Stafford's been terrible the last couple of weeks. I mean, that pick 6 last week was not good. 6 interceptions over the last 3 weeks. Woof. It's been rough. But you want to trust good offenses who have a ceiling, and we've seen that, obviously, from them. And this spot is awesome for the passing attack for the Rams. We talked about it a little bit with Cooper Kupp, but just looking at the secondary, like Josh Norman is this team's cornerback 1 at this point in time. That is a huge red flag against 3 really solid wide receivers in Cooper Kupp, Odell Beckham, and Van Jefferson as well, who can take the lid off the defense. So I like this spot for Stafford. I know he's been bad, but if people are going to be shying away from him, like sign me up as a Stafford double stack in tournaments all day.
Yep. Both sides 6.7 on DK, 7.4 on FanDuel. I will be playing Matthew Stafford double stacks because I've been doing it. I'm going to stay with it. Right when he played Baltimore and Minnesota, it didn't work out, but I'm going to stay with it. And like you mentioned, Cooper Kupp has a lot to play for. On FanDuel, I know it says 10K, which is crazy. It's actually a value compared to DK. So on FanDuel at 10K, you can play them there too. OBJ and Van Jefferson, where are you at on those two dudes, and do you have a preference?
Yeah, I think I still lean OBJ. I mean, he's getting looks around the goal line. I think it's 4 of his last 5. He has a touchdown.
Apparently he's good.
Apparently. Who would have thought? So yes, I'm going more with Odell, given the touchdown upside. He also has 7+ targets in 3 of his last 4. So I think you're looking at this sort of situation. If you're trying to win the millie, like maybe Odell isn't the guy to double stack with Kupp because Kupp's going to take so much. But in these smaller field tournaments that I play in where I'm more looking for this correlation piece, I think Kupp and Odell together with Stafford sounds really interesting.
Can you play those two in cash? Let's say you didn't have Kupp in your lineup, but you want some exposure to the Rams who have a fine team implied total of 24.5.
I personally probably won't. There's just so many other names in that like upper 5s range that I would prefer, or lower 6. Like I'm going to try to get up to Brandon Cooks in cash if I can, or Michael Pittman, who we talked about, for $100 more. So I don't think for me this week on OBJ in cash.
I'll just say Jefferson's always tempting because he's had some big plays. I love the offense, but the target totals you mentioned, they've dropped for him while OBJ's has risen. So tempted by him. I think he's even a better tournament play. Sony Michel might get lost in the mix of this game because Eli Mitchell's been so good. He might be the running back that people play Stafford double stacks and then bring it back with Eli Mitchell, or they bring it back with Debo. So Sony's fine as kind of like a way to pivot off of those stacks, or even pivot off a popular Cooper Kupp. DK, they didn't really move his salary, $6K. On FanDuel, he's probably too expensive at 7.7. If you wanted to go super contrarian on FanDuel and use him there, I totally get it. But let's talk about the 49ers side. What if I told you, and maybe this is out of character of me, what if I told you that George Kittle is my favorite play on the slate?
I would be not surprised at all.
I'm pretty excited about George Kittle, especially on FanDuel at 6.9. He's fine on DK at 6.7. But George Kittle, I posted about this in our Pace of Play article, has destroyed Sean McVay, and not many people can say that. I'm going to read off these lines because they made me hot and heavy for a player that I like a lot. George Kittle, dating back to 2017, 4 for 100, 5 for 98 and a score, 9, 149 and 1. 8 for 103, 579 and 1, 7 109 and 1, and 5 for 50 and 1. How does that get you going?
I mean, dude, I've known you for a while now, and I don't think I've seen you smile that much in quite a few weeks. So you've got to be pretty excited about Kittle, and especially, Kittle's a guy that like I don't really want to play when he's been like red hot and people are all going to be on him. He's the exact type of guy that you want to look at and say, okay, when has he failed in the past? Last week before, he's done nothing. That's when I want to jump back in on George Kittle because we know that's in his range of outcomes. He has these like 3-4 target games, and then out of nowhere, he goes off for like 12 targets and breaks the slate. So yes, please sign me up. He is definitely in play this week for GPPs.
Kyle Shanahan has come out and said that there are games that he just basically builds the entire game plan around George Kittle. So it's like one of those things that we're not privy to that information, obviously, but when they hit, he explodes. And just in terms against the Rams, the lines I just gave, that's over 20 DK points per game. Like the lowest that I gave there was 16.1. He's just exploded. So I love him in tournaments. I love him on FanDuel this week. And I think he's going to be a bring back option that a lot of people are basically saying, do I go Mitchell or do I go Debo? And I just want to say that I think Kittle is great. The only, caveat is Trey Lance. He's a wild card. We really don't have enough film and enough game logs to be able to say this is what he's going to do, but it's up to Kyle Shanahan. But I just want to give you the confidence to play Kittle in tournaments if you're shooting for ceiling. But what other 49ers do you want to talk about?
I mean, it's always tricky with these two wide receivers. Like Debo, we know what he can do. He's just so expensive. 8,500 on DK, 8,800 on FanDuel. It's tough for me to click the button on a guy who's just relied so much on efficiency running the football to get there. I think I'm probably out on Debo. What are your thoughts here?
Yeah, I've tried to fade Debo. I know we had him on our big dog team, and I was thankful to get some exposure to him. But every week that I want to fade Debo, he just explodes. Like, he's one of those few players that can go 8 for 180. I mean, that's just like so rare to be able to find that, to find 180 yards and a touchdown. He's going to get the ball out of the backfield too. So just the touches, I'll mix him in, but I'm going to be probably more on the Kittle side this week, and then maybe even mix in some Ayuk, and he's way cheaper than Debo, like a good $3,000 cheaper on DraftKings. But how do you feel about Elijah Mitchell? Like, he was the dude last week. Jeff Wilson was on the field for 12 snaps, and he didn't see a touch. So Eli Mitchell at $6K. I mean, on FanDuel, he's $8K. It's like really expensive. They priced him up. But on DraftKings, they haven't moved him. So how are you feeling about him?
Yeah, which is so surprising because he was the same price last week and had an unbelievable role. Didn't even move his salary at all. It's the Christmas keeps on giving, man. This is awesome. I like Eli Mitchell. I mean, you just got to find someone who loves you the way Kyle Shanahan loves Eli Mitchell. In his last 4 healthy games, and we're talking about like multiple weeks in and out of the lineup, as soon as he comes back, he's just getting the ball. I mean, we're looking at 27, 33, 32, 23 opportunities in his last 4 healthy games. And at that tag, if you're going to get somewhere in the range of 20 to 25 opportunities, yeah, for sure, he's obviously going to be in play. And I think the way that you play this game is, I know that the Vegas spread says the Rams are favored to win. So it would be tough for me to play him in games where I think the Niners play from behind. But if they get out to a lead, Eli Mitchell is going to be the focal point. So I think my approach here is like, I'm almost going to say play Mitchell, and then, you want to kind of bring it back with like the passing attack on the other side. But if you're playing this to be a game where they play from behind, then Kittle sounds awesome. So I'm going to have exposure to both scenarios and kind of go from there. But yeah, I think both guys are certainly in play. And when you're going to get that much volume at $6K on DraftKings, he's an awesome play.
Trey Lance feels like his range of outcomes is all over the map. Like, this could be like a game where he has 3 turnovers and just self-implodes. It could be a game where he runs for 80 yards. And so I just want to finish off with Lance. We know he's a great cash game play. How are you handling him in tournaments?
Yeah, last week I felt like I kind of fell in the trap of like feeling like I had to have him because of the salary savings he offered. So, I mean, he was really popular in tournaments. And I know we usually say like, don't worry about it for quarterbacks. It's usually pretty flat. That was not the case last week. He was very popular. I could see the same scenario happening again with everyone wants to play Kupp and JT. So yeah, if he's going to be really popular again, then I think there's paths to fading him this week in tournaments.
All right, give me your Vegas pick.
I feel torn by this, but I'm going to go with the Rams. I'm going to lay the points. Even though Matthew Stafford has been terrible, I will take the Rams.
Yeah, I'm going to do the same thing. I just feel like the Rams at home, -4.5. I will take those points. All right, before we get into the Battle Royale, let's talk about a couple of teams that have huge implied totals. We call them our Onslaught teams, and then a couple of slate breakers. So I'll let you hit the first team for the Onslaught, and I'll do the next one.
All right, let's talk about the Bills. They are very good. The Jets are not very good. The Bills currently favored by, it's down now to 16 points. The team total is sitting at 28.5. And like you talked about, in this spot, they're at home. They've got a huge total. We love Josh Allen for tournaments, especially on DraftKings, because I don't think anyone's going to play him given the salary savings that Taysom Hill and Trey Lance provide. But, I mean, in this spot, his upside is huge. And I know that we talked about Devin Singletary as a cash game build. I think he's totally in play. But if you wanted to get off the chalk, I mean, I don't think a lot of people are going to click the button on Diggs, on Gabe Davis, on Dawson Knox. But that's where, the targets are going as far as the touchdown upside in this passing game. So if Singletary is going to be the most popular play on this team, which I do think he will be, then I'm really excited to go Onslaught stacks with Josh Allen and a couple pass catchers against the Jets for obvious reasons.
Yes, I love the Stephon Diggs. I think he's safe. I wish I've seen more upside this week or this year, but I like him a lot. I'll mention the Colts. We talked about Jonathan Taylor. They're 15-point road favorites. They have a team implied total of 29.5. Jacksonville ranks 31st in points per drive allowed. And if you wanted to bring it back with a Jaguar, like, it's not going to be a Goomba Wale. I just don't see a ceiling. Treadwell feels like he's the floor play. So Chenault's basically been one of the worst wide receivers that I've ever seen 90-plus targets. There's only one guy left.
Of course you would bring up this guy in the last regular season week of the year.
You know, the other day, it was Wednesday, we had our mailbag show, and there was a question.
Oh, I'm well aware. I think everyone heard that.
There's a question. Who would you rather have, Marvin Jones or Kenyon Drake in Dynasty? And I just had to cut in and say, we all know the answer to this question. Hopefully people understand the bits from our show. Hopefully they understand the Glennon bit. Maybe they don't. But Marvin Jones.
That's not a bit. That's never been more real.
I was going to say, Marvin Jones, I really believe in him. He's just almost 32 years old, so he's almost done. But with the Colts, believe in their offense. Believe that Jonathan Taylor has 3 touchdown upside. Like, it's very real this week. So Colts need to win and get in, aside from a really weird scenario where the Raiders and Chargers tie, which would just be so poetic to this year if something like that happened. All right. Our slate breakers for this week. Give me some names.
All right. We're going to start at wide receiver. I'm going out of order here because I'm so excited about this guy. And last time I said this, he went off. It is Justin Jefferson this week, assuming Kirk Cousins is playing quarterback. If it's not Kirk Cousins, ignore all this. But there's so much to like about Justin Jefferson this year without Adam Thielen in the lineup. He's just seeing so much volume. And now he gets a spot at home. You talk about this all the time. When he plays at home, he's averaging over 100 yards in his career and almost a touchdown per game. And last week, he still saw volume, but it was Sean Mannion and like 5 yards per attempt. Like, that's not what Justin Jefferson succeeds at. It's the deep ball. It's breaking the slate with these huge plays. And his ceiling this week is massive. I love him at his tag at 8.1. I don't think anyone is going to play him this week, given the need to spend up for Jonathan Taylor and Cooper Kupp. So I think we'll get lost in the shuffle. Absolutely love him this week for GPPs.
Do you feel like you have to correlate him, or is he just a one-off? Like, because on the Bears side, it seems like they're going to be without Justin Fields. Is it just one of those things where you just play Justin Jefferson and just know, hey, he's the dude?
I think you could if you wanted to correlate him with David Montgomery. He's a strong play as well on the Chicago side, but I don't think you have to. I'm totally fine to play him as a one-off.
All right, I'm going to mention 2 wide receivers as well. A.J. Brown is $7K on DraftKings, 7.4 on FanDuel. He has destroyed Houston in his career. I won't go through the game logs. I tweeted it out, but 5 touchdowns in his last 5 games against Houston. And then another one, your boy, Terry McLaurin, who has done nothing this year. No one's going to click the button on that game because it has the lowest total on the slate. So no one's going to want to go there at all to talk about Washington, but Terry McLaurin has been a beast against the Giants in his career. 6.2 on DraftKings, 6.7. I just wanted to mention him as a one-off play if you wanted to get cute and different than everyone else. I mean, if Terry McLaurin went 5 for 120 and a touchdown, are you a happy man?
I mean, my heart, my love for Terry McLaurin knows no bounds. But I'd also be a little jaded. Like, he's a guy I was aggressively going after in Dynasty all offseason. I just wanted so many shares of this guy. And like you said, it was a train wreck. But maybe this is a week. I mean, what did you say? He's going to be like 3% probably in tournaments?
Yes, easily under 5.
I'll take a shot for sure.
Is Terry McLaurin your Keenan Allen?
Yeah, I think he's my favorite player in the NFL.
Dude, that's cool. He's a cool dude, too. I like him a lot. At tight end, I already mentioned Kittle as my favorite play on the slate. And depending on our roster percentage, if he comes in lower, like, I'm going to be overweight on Kittle, just like in best ball, which I don't know if it's the best strategy, but I love it. It's week 18. Do whatever we want. Give me some tight ends.
Yeah, dude, there's no rules this week. It's the best. So we talked about Gronk, 6,300. I'm not sure he's going to be that popular in cash as far as like roster percentage. So in tournaments, he should be kind of flying under the radar. I like him in this spot. Obviously, we know Antonio Brown is not on the team anymore. Chris Godwin's still injured. Leonard Fournette's still out. So if you're getting Gronk in this spot, he needs 7 catches and 85 yards. Each of those separately, you can get them both or one or the other, can earn him a cool extra $500,000 for each. So I think Tom is going to be incentivized to help him get there. They've talked about they want the 2 seed. The motivation is there. They've got a nice team total. I like Gronk. And then as well, Mark Andrews. I mean, we can't really say enough about how good he's been, but I really like Tyler Huntley's stacks in tournaments this week against Pittsburgh. We've seen them, not including last week with the train wreck that was Baker Mayfield and the Browns, But before that, giving up big plays, really just struggling on defense. So I like Mark Andrews as well, has a chance to break the slate.
All right, at running back for slate breakers, I'm going to mention a name. He's one of my favorite players in DFS because Nick Chubb kind of gets pigeonholed as, well, he doesn't catch passes, so I don't really want him. He can't really get there. But we know that he has these explosive games. I know that he's been limited in practice. If I got a full practice from him on Friday for Nick Chubb, and he went 137-2 against these Bengals earlier in the year, then I like him as a high upside GPP play that no one really wants to play, especially on DraftKings 7.9. So he has a ceiling that not many players, I think, can get to. So I'll mention Nick Chubb and another running back you want to mention?
Yes, let's talk about the Patriots real quick. It's pretty simple. If Damian Harris is out, Ramondre Stevenson looks like an awesome play. I mean, you're looking at a defense that on paper against the Dolphins would be pretty tough, right? I mean, looking at the Stream Finder tool over the last several weeks, they're second best in terms of defending the running backs. But here's who they played. The Jets twice, the Giants with an injured Saquon Barkley and a terrible offensive line, the Panthers and Chuba Hubbard, and New Orleans on that Monday night game without their starting tackles and Ian Book. So fade the matchup, trust that the Patriots want to ride their running backs, and they're favored in a positive game script. And there is some motivation here still for the Patriots to potentially improve seeding. So I think they're going to play their guys. And we know Ramondre has that like 120 yard plus 2 touchdown performance in his upside.
DFS Battle Royale.
Betz and I are going to battle out again. Last week, it was John Daigle taking my spot, but here we are again. Betz down to the wire, week 18. I guess we'll kind of keep going in the playoffs and kind of get weird with some of our category picks, but give me a stacking quarterback under 6K this week that you think, hey, you could use this in a tournament.
Yeah, give me Tyler Huntley, 5.7K. Lamar Jackson's still not practicing, so it will be the Tyler Huntley show. And, we've seen his upside before. I think he was a guy that we were on a little bit last week, Daigle and I, but he was on the COVID list previously, so maybe there was some lingering effects from that. But we've seen him, before have huge ceiling upside if he runs the football. He's cheap. You can single stack him with Mark Andrews, who I love, as I just said. So give me him against Pittsburgh, who, by the way, just lost their top corner, Joe Hayden, to the COVID list.
I'm going to go with great Davis Mills. 5.3. The Texans can play spoiler at home. Okay, I don't really have a lot going for me, but the Texans have shown some fight. I think that actually they're in a good spot. They did beat the Titans earlier this year. Let's not forget this, okay? The great Texans. So Davis Mills at home, he can get to that 300-yard bonus, and at 5.3, I think you could stack him with Cooks. Nico Collins is a sneaky play this week. I think the Texans are at least, they're a vomit stack. They're a stack that you would say, I don't really want to do this, but sometimes gross is good in DFS. All right, give me a cash game running back this week, and we can't say Jonathan Taylor. We can't say Alvin Kamara.
Can I just cheat and say the Cardinals starting running back?
Sure.
Because it was Chase Edmonds. Now he's not practicing. So whoever's starting for the Cardinals, I think is going to be in an awesome spot this week against Seattle. I
don't know if this player has a higher ceiling than those guys, but Devin Singletary at 6K, I just want to give everyone the confidence. Like, he's the play. Like, if you're not playing Josh Allen and cash, I want exposure to the Bills, and the Jets might be the worst fantasy rushing defense of all time. So play Devin Singletary at 6K, and you will be a happy person. Okay, cheap wide receiver. And the story is that Betz and I went into the doc and at the exact same time decided that we wanted to type in the same person. So I'll let you reveal it.
Dude, this was so funny that it actually happened. We both were going in to type Marvin Jones. I know why you were going to do it, because you have extreme bias for this player. I was going into it because there's a sneaky stat that the Colts, giving up 75% of their touchdowns they give up, they're through the air. So I know the floor is 0 for Marvin Jones, but if it's going to happen, like, it's probably going to be him. It's not going to be Laquan Treadwell. I mean, that's maybe it is, but it's tough to see a ceiling. So not a cash game play by any means, but I am interested a little bit as a sprinkle in GPPs for Marv Jones.
A Marvin Jones sprinkle to end the year is a delicious treat for me. I love it. My bankroll would love it because it's definitely thrown him in a number of tournament lineups. So Marvin Jones, 4.3, is a cheap wide receiver. We know he has upside. If Trevor Lawrence would just decide to throw a touchdown, that would be nice. But you put Ray McCloud down. It's not beautiful, but would you play him in a tournament, or is he one of those people it's like, okay, if he gains steam, I'm going to go with Chase Claypool, who's 5.1?
Yeah, I think looking right now at the slate, the wide receivers below 4,000, there's none, essentially. So this is the same idea with Braxton Berrios last week. He was a guy that I faded in tournaments, and obviously in hindsight, that looks terrible. But whenever you have a volatile player at a cheap tag that the field is going to be on, especially at wide receiver, I'm almost always going to fade it. And so if people are playing Ray McCloud, given his low ADOT, in tournaments, I'm absolutely out. I think Chase Claypool will be much more interesting in that scenario. Given that we know the Ravens struggle with the deep ball, that's where Claypool can win. Ray does not necessarily do that.
What about punt tight end? I have Austin Hooper. It's a great matchup against the Bengals, allowing the most fantasy points to tight ends. 3.6, he's necessary. I think Case Keenum might be an upgrade. So I don't mind Austin Hooper. I don't know if he has a high ceiling, but you could play him in cash.
Yeah, it's tough. There's not a lot of great options. So I went with Mount Everett. If you recall from last year, listeners, Kyle climbed the mountain with Gerald Everett this week. We talked about that game. We're interested in Russ stacks. I think you can include him there. He's 3,700. He's got 60 yards and or a touchdown in 4 of his last 5 games. So nice tag for a guy if you want to correlate with Russ.
And sneaky DST, I like the Browns at 2.6. They're probably going to gain some steam since I put this in the doc because Brandon Allen is going to be the quarterback. Joe Mixon's likely out. Jamar Chase might be out. The Bengals really don't have a ton to play for, like especially if the Titans lock things up. So I do think the Browns at home are in a good spot in a game that should hit, under 40 points.
Yep, like them a lot as well. The name I put down for this week is Lions. I do think we're going to see some Jordan Love this week. I think we'll see minimal to no Devontae Adams potentially. So follow what's going on with the Packers if they're going to rest some guys, which I think they will because they locked up the 1 seed. Like, what's there to play for? If they do that, then the Lions are in play.
I put some money on Lions plus 2.5 earlier today because, hey, there's nothing better than putting your hard-earned money on a hard-earned guy, Dan Campbell. Just a fighter.
Dude, less than a field goal. You might as well just take the money line, man.
Dude, I'm excited about the Lions. You're probably right. Let's go with the mailbag. Betz giving me really good betting advice, and he's not wrong.
Mailbag.
Maybe I got it at plus 4.5. I'll look back at it later.
Either way, let's go Lions.
Yeah, come on. I mean, this is the team that you can get behind. Amon-Ra is going bananas right now. Tim Boyle revenge game. I mean, what could be better for your bankroll?
Nothing.
All right, we can get into the mailbag. I actually am going to check this. Nope, I did take Lions money line. Okay, I'm not an idiot.
All right, good.
I'm
proud of you.
My past self was a smart man. You can send your mailbag questions to me, Kyle_Borg, or Betz, at the Fantasy PT. I am now back into life where I can answer questions on Twitter. I've just been MIA for the past week and a half. This first one, and I'm going to really couple a couple together. First one comes in from William Ivy and another one from Jared Peasley on Twitter. They asked, how do you guys determine roster percentage? Is it an educated guess with algorithm support? And Jared kind of followed up and said, the roster percentage report on the DFS Pass, is it better for cash or GPPs? How should I use this? So personally, Betz, how do you use roster percentage each week?
Yeah, what we have in the DFS Pass is specific to larger field tournaments. So you kind of have to understand how that might change based off the field size and then based off cash games, obviously. So when you're looking at the roster percentage report, think about it as, these thousands and thousands of people in a tournament. That's kind of what you're going to see most likely. If you're playing in these ones that I play in, where, it's like 500 people or less sometimes, the best plays tend to get condensed. So if you're playing in that scenario, you can expect the highest rostered guys to be even higher. And then in cash, we know for sure that is the case. It's going to be way higher. Like, for example, Trey Lance last week in GPPs was coming in around like 20 to 25%, depending on the field. And then in cash, he was like 65 to 70%. So we use it more for tournaments. I don't use it a lot for cash because what we put in the DFS Pass is not specific to cash games.
Yes. Here's a good rule of thumb for cash if you wanted to think about it this way. The most popular players, okay, that's the only reason you would use roster percentage. Let's say it's Jonathan Taylor. If Jonathan Taylor is coming in 25%, in tournaments. Let's just say that's where he's at. You need to at least double it for cash. And it could be even higher. But like the weeks that we were getting these stone min running backs, remember the week it was D'Ernest Johnson was like the free square that week. Like D'Ernest Johnson in our roster percentage report was near 40%. In cash, he was near 80%. And so that's not always the case that you take the roster percentage and it correlates exactly to what you're playing in cash. But I think it's super important when you're looking at this report and you're understanding what's going on.
Yes.
No.
Yes.
No.
Oh, you have to keep it going. No editing this.
Oh,
yes,
man.
I got you.
You lost it live, Kyle. Come on,
that's
dude.
That's in the podcast.
I thought you were a professional.
I used to be a professional, but when Jason Moore starts taking off his shirt and showing a little something, I was, as a man, as a grown man, I was moved.
I mean, hey, and listeners, just so you know, I can't see what's happening behind that Kyle can see. So I'm watching him talk about roster percentages and like, why is he smiling so much? Like, I mean, it's a cool topic. It's not that cool. And here he is just looking at Jason taking his shirt off.
So on our Tuesday show, just behind the scenes, when we were talking about Trey Lance, that's Mike's guy. Mike happened to walk in the room right when we started, and he started doing a little dance too. And I was a professional, just straight-faced, just stone cold, doing awesome. But I couldn't help it when Jason started showing off his belly in the background. So with roster percentage, I'll at least explain this about how it's put together. It is an algorithm with a little bit of human support. So Betz and I have a conversation throughout the week. Okay, this guy's popular. We'll know he'll be popular. How popular is he? And so a lot of it is me and you kind of averaging our opinions. And sometimes, I'll win out because I'm kind of the one that's putting it finally in. But the goal is you're not going to get it perfect, but you are trying to give people an understanding of salary values, what is the field going to do, and then also the slate size, right? Like how many running backs can we play, and is that going to kind of push things down? So this week, there's 6 to 8 running backs that we would say at least 15 to 20% are viable right now, and some of those are going to be north of that. I bet Devin Singletary is going to hit that 25% mark in cash. I bet he's going to be at least 50. So that's something you think about. We also have an algorithm that's called the Buzz Report, and that takes all of the social media out there. I wish my brain could figure this out. And it basically sees how often a player is tagged. So if Devin Singletary is tagged a lot in terms of DFS and DK type stuff, then he's going to show up in our Buzz Report. And so that's kind of how we do it. But take the roster percentage report, use it as a tool. It's not going to be gospel. We're going to be wrong on certain players. And sometimes we overthink what the field's going to do. Have you run into that situation where it's like, I feel like everyone's going to be about this player, and then they come in at like 8%?
Yeah, for sure. Especially if you get late news that changes the slate a little bit, that you could think a guy's going to come in 20% and then you don't play him. And then you turn around and he's like 10 or 12 and you're like, oh, I would have loved to play that guy at 10%. So yeah, again, it's a rough outline. I think more often than not, it's pretty close. It's pretty accurate, but there are times where it's off, and that's why it's a projection.
Yeah. And if you see, I mentioned this, I remember a question earlier on in the year, someone asked like, hey, you projected Josh Allen for 15% and he was only 12. Guys, like that's pretty close. That's really good. And we're going to overvalue players. We're going to undervalue, because think about how many people, if we're projecting for large fields, these tournaments that have 120,000 people in them, there's so much variability because there's people. It's not just a straight computer. So our projections, I would say, are pretty strong throughout the year, and they do give you a tool to work with. I would just say for wide receivers, I love looking at that and saying, okay, who are some wide receivers that could go off? And sometimes it doesn't work out, but sometimes you find a wide receiver that is under 5% that can go for 102, and that's how you break a slate. Next question is from Becca. She said, enjoying the DFS Pass and your podcast, the cost has paid itself off tenfold. You like to hear that, right?
Oh, you love it.
It's a good thing. She said, thank you. I am tempted each week to enter the Millie Maker, but my bankroll is small and I would be limited to just a few entries. Is there other similar contests that you use that's cheaper buy-ins? And I know, Betz, you don't play the Millie Maker. You may throw one in there every once in a while for fun if I try to bully you. But what are some tournaments you like?
Yes, I found that entering the 150 style lineups, where you can get 150 max in there isn't for me personally. So I don't play that a lot, but there are ones that I really like that are smaller entries as far as the price and as well the number of people playing in it. So I love the 50K Engage 8 on DraftKings. It's $8 per entry. It's a 3 max entry. There's 5,000 up top to first place. So you're not going to win a milli, but there's a chance at 5K, which is really nice. And then the other one that I like is the 10K nickel 3 max again. 3 entries that you get. It's $5. It's got $1,000 up top to first.
I mentioned before the play action. It's one of those that if you want that feeling of a large field, but you're not willing, you're like, I can't put in that big of an, it's $3, 20 max. So you're putting in $60. So instead of just putting in 3 entries in the Milli Maker at $20 each, you can put in 20 and max it out, and the top prize is $100,000. So yes, it is hard. It's really hard to win, but at least you're giving yourself an opportunity to put in some more entries. If you want to say, I'm going to run with 3 different quarterbacks and figure out, here's 6 to 7 lineups per stack that I want to use, I think that one's fine. But I'd recommend that. I still throw in a golden gun approach on the Milli Maker. Part of that is just to be able to say I used a golden gun approach, but with cash each week, I feel fine with it with my bankroll. But it is not a good tournament in terms of plus EV at all. Last one right here is from John Rintow. He said, with the playoffs around the corner, how do you build your cash and GPP lineups during the playoffs? Is it similar to the regular season, or is there a different strategy that you employ?
Playoff DFS is the best DFS. I absolutely love it. For cash games, it sort of is the same. We're looking for the best median outcomes, top values, that sort of thing. So that doesn't really change. But what I like a lot about playoff DFS is that there's a lot of different slates that you can play in. For wildcard weekend, they do sometimes a Saturday slate, sometimes they do just a Sunday slate. This year, I think we get 2 Monday games or something like that for the wildcard round. So there's multiple slates you can play. But if you're playing tournaments and you're playing across multiple days, I love it because it's not overwhelming. You can kind of see what happens on Saturday. Then you have the opportunity to late swap and have an entire day to think about what you want to do. So I really like that type of style. For me, that GPP setting is exciting. It's different. And it's super fun because you're always talking about the best players in the game that have huge ceilings. So I love it for GPPs. I think, though, for cash, it's pretty much the exact same approach.
Yes. I mean, you got a taste of it, right, with Thanksgiving. Where you got 3 games, it's very similar. It is fun, though. You and I remember last year, that Bills and Colts game. I remember dissecting that. I think we had the over that you and I did, and it hit at the very end, right? Or we pushed?
Yeah, I think it pushed, actually, on a last field goal.
We were so lucky on that one. But it's just a different way to be able to say, okay, what is the field going to do with 4 games? And how do I respond to that? So we're going to have articles out for all of that stuff. We're going to go throughout the playoffs, cash picks, GPP picks, talk about those games. I mean, we've been recently saying, I don't know if I want to stack this game. We're going to talk about all of those games and preview them from a DFS perspective. The roster percentage report will obviously look different because we're just, there's no sneaky plays. Everybody's 30% or higher. It's just kind of figuring out leverage plays. Let's say you don't go with a Dallas offense stack. Instead, you flip the script and go with whoever they play. Let's say it's the 49ers or the Saints or something. Then you're just saying, how can I use that against the field? Because leverage is so important when you're only dealing with a couple of games. So love the playoffs. It's a lot of fun for us. You can go to ballersdfs.com if you want to play with us, our DraftKings League. I opened up a contest, Betz, today called the Week 18 Saturday Special, and it's almost filled. By the time you guys are hearing this, it will be filled, and I will open up some more for Saturday for the main slate. So Battle of the Borg, Battle of the Betz. Betz, have you been taking people's money this year?
Dude, it's been rough for me in these tournaments. I think all of our listeners are bullying me. It's been a long season there, but no, this is the weekend it's happening. Hopefully, anyway. And if you are playing the Saturday slate, I will be putting out a 2-game preview in the DFS Pass. Usually I put out a Thursday night football preview. Of course, no Thursday night this week, so you'll get that for the Saturday content as well.
Yep. So you can join the league, enter into our contest, and it's a great one to invite your friends as we continue this DFS journey all throughout the NFL playoffs. Betz, why don't you tell people goodbye?
Yes, Week 18 is going to be fun. I love this slate. Last year, Week 17 was my best DFS week of the year. Stay plugged in. The DFS Pass will have you covered all weekend. Good luck. We will see you next week.
Thank you for listening to another edition of the Fantasy Footballers DFS Podcast. Don't forget to visit us on the web at www.thefantasyfootballers.com.